Wouldn't it be great in a league played with inconsistency that you had access to the most consistent players on any given day? Well, I got you, fam. So in today's video, I'm going to take you through the most consistent plays in the WNBA, whether it's overs or unders. I'll be taking a look at it. I'll be sharing my screen. I'll take you through what I like, and I'll share my leagues with you so you can make the best bets possible on this upcoming slate on the WNBA. Yesterday, we nailed 3 winners. Kalia Copper under 3-pointers made. Easy money. We smashed on Brianna Jones overs, and we also cashed on Aaliyah Boston over her points and rebounds. So not a bad day. Hoping to do it once again. If that sounds interesting, let's go. Before we jump into today's video, I want to introduce to you Rebet, who are quite new. They're available in 42 out of 50 states in the US. It's another fantasy app. The more apps you have, the more options that you have. They also have a 100% deposit match if you sign up using my code DAFT or if you use one of the links below. They're pretty cool, and they've recently just introduced the WNBA. So the one thing I would encourage you to do before you make your bets, open up your apps, do a search to see where the best odds are. If you run a 2-man on Chalkboard, you might find on the same 2-man with Rebet, you get better odds. So that's what I'd encourage you to do. Check these guys out. Now let's get into it. All right, we got a 4-game slate in this one. Mercury and Mystics. It's a very early game. You can see it on my screen, 1:30 a.m. my time, and I'm not going to wake up early to watch the first 2 sets of games, but I may still have some bets on. So we'll go through this game by game, find the most consistent players. We'll find players who have good matchups, and we'll also check some head-to-head form to see what's cracking. Firstly, if we're filtering this out by the last 10 games, there is nobody in this game who's been performing consistently over their last 10. If we look at their last 5 games, there's a few consistent plays here. The first one, Kalia Copper, over 21.5 points. Now, that's cashed in 4 out of her last 5, which is an 80% hit rate. Most recently against the Connecticut Sun, finished with 17 points in that game, 35 minutes played. She'd get some shots up, 17 shots. She only made 8 of them, but she was only 1 from 4 from deep. So we did take her under on the 3-pointer side of things. Up against the Mystics team, they do allow the 5th most points in the league. How they defend guards, they do allow the 3rd most. So it's a pretty good matchup for the over here for Kalia Copper. Looking at her last 10, it's only 5 out of her last 10. I'm having a quick look at the lineups because we know that DT's been out for quite some time. Now, it is early. The lineups haven't been released as of yet. There might be a chance that DT returns in this one, so I'd probably pump the brakes on it a little bit and wait to see what her status is. But at 21.5, I'd probably be assuming that she's back because it does seem quite low. But if we look at her head-to-head numbers against Washington, she's gone under in 5 consecutive games, only played them once this season. She did score 20 points in that game. The Mercury just got the win. She didn't shoot well, 7 for 17, 3 from 9 from deep, and a couple of free throws as well. So I'd be a little bit hesitant around it. But Kalia Copper exceeded 21.5 points in 6 out of her last 7 games against bottom 5 defenses for points allowed. So what this is saying is when the matchup is right and she's up against a trash-ass team, Kalia Copper has delivered. So 6 out of her last 7. Again, it's another one where I'd lean to the over. I'm not sure how much I love this, though, but the over, definitely a strong lean. So I'll put that on my short list because she wasn't great today against the Connecticut Sun, but we could get a bounce-back game from her. Next up, in terms of consistency, well, there isn't that many, to be honest with you. But one that doesn't seem too bad, we can look at Stephanie Dolson, her over 5.5 rebounds. She's cashed this in 7 out of her last 10 games. So 70% hit rate, averaging 6.5 rebounds per game. I like this because the matchup's good. The Mercury do allow the 2nd most rebounds in the league. And in terms of centers, though, they do allow the 3rd fewest. And that makes me a little bit hesitant. If we look at the head-to-head matchup, she's only played them once this season. She only got 14 minutes, though. So you can't make an accurate assessment based off the head-to-head numbers because since she's been promoted to the starting lineup, she's getting a lot more minutes, almost 30 minutes a night. And at 30 minutes, she can get quite close to this. If you can be bothered, and I cannot be bothered to do this right now, you can go through all the box scores for Phoenix Mercury, probably check the last 5 games and check to see how many boards the centers got in that because they do give up a lot of rebounds. It's just not necessarily to the bigs. That's what I would do. If you're interested in this, I'd lean to the over, but I cannot be asked going through all the box scores from their last games. Last thing I want to check, though, in this game is how the head-to-head form. So hopefully we get a big sample size. And there's a lot of plays with a 100% hit rate up against their opposition. But what I'm ultimately looking for is a good matchup with solid head-to-head numbers. So Natasha Cloud's one that stands out to me at 11.5 points. So she's hit the over in the only game she played against Washington this season, where she scored 14 points, only took 6 shots, but got to the free throw line. If we look at how she's going recently, she's covered this in 6 out of her last 10. She has covered 10 plus in 9 out of her last 10. But this line of 11.5 in only 6 out of her last 10. The matchup, pretty good. The Washington team, they do allow a lot of points to guards. We went through that with Clear Copper. So at 11.5, shit. It ain't too bad. When she versus bad team, she's over in 4 out of her last 5. I don't mind this one as well, but similar to Copper, I don't actually love this play. I don't love the Copper play. Either of these girls could go off, and DT does play. There's a chance that she goes off too. So there's a pretty good matchup for all of them. So I'd probably just have to pass on that. I don't want to take plays that I'm kind of liking if I'm going to rush my research using this method. So if it's not screaming out to me, I'm just not going to take it. What else have we got here? So Diana Taurasi, there is lines available for her. Points line at 15.5. So she's going to play. And I think what's worth looking at is Clear Copper games with Diana Taurasi. And she's hit the over in 5 out of her last 10, 21.9 as an average. In one game against Washington, so this is unders, my bad, under 21.5. Went under in the only game. Last 10, she's hit the over 5 times, under 5 times. So same. So not necessarily loving Clear Copper, Natasha Cloud. Their numbers look okay, but we know that Diana Taurasi has been out. So their recent form, you could only assume has been somewhat inflated without DT in the lineup. So no real bets from me in this particular game. Nothing that I'm loving, and I ain't here to force nothing up. So let's jump into the next one. It's a Storm versus Spark. I'm going to quick look at the lineups first. The Storm's lineup hasn't been released. The Spark, same types of players who are out. So nothing crazy different going on there. Now, if we look at the last 10 games first, the player with the best success rate here is Ari McDonald. Her points line's at 11.5. She's cashed in 7 out of her last 10 games. We look at the matchup. The Seattle Storm will have the third fewest points to guards, so I'd be a little bit hesitant around that. 7 out of her last 10 and averaging 11.7. She's played them once this season, though. She scored 15 points in that game in 27 minutes. So she took 27 minutes, she took 8 shots, got to the free throw line quite well. Leading up to this game, she's getting 28.8 minutes, so you can probably expect similar minutes. 10.3 shot attempts, so the volume, somewhat similar as well. Not getting to the free throw line as much, and 33% from deep. So I don't necessarily love the over there for Ari McDonald. And nothing else is in the green for the last 10. So if we look at the last 5, there is a prop on Jackson, her first half points, but that prop's going to be really specific to Prize Picks, I believe. It's going to be difficult for anybody else to find. Nothing else screaming out in terms of consistency over the last 5. Head-to-head matches, though, what are we looking at here? So this is interesting. Nyeka for the first basket. What's the sample size here? Well, it's only one game. So in one game against them, she scored first. Boo, that's a shit stat. What else do we have? Dearica Hamby, under 19.5 points, has a good hit rate up against the Storm. So in her last 5 games, she's gone under in all 5 of them. They matched up once this season. She scored 16 points in that game, 35 minutes and 16 shot attempts. Now, if we look at the recent numbers, though, she's hit the under in only 5 of her last 10, averaging 19 points per game. It might be matchup specific, though, but she has done well against some good teams. Liberty, Mercury, Aces, Mercury, and then the Wings. So if we look at how this Storm team defends forwards, though, they allow the second fewest points to forwards in the league. Erica Hamby over her last 10, 34 minutes a night, 14.4 shot attempts, but some of these games she's taking 20-plus shots. So this Storm team might be equipped to really slow her down, which is evident in the head-to-head numbers. But if we take a look at this insight here, Dearica Hamby's failed to exceed 19.5 points in 13 of her last 17 games at home. So at home, she hasn't necessarily played too good. 7 out of 11 games this season, she's hit the under. So that's a very interesting stat. One thing I want to do is, if you didn't watch yesterday's video, I'll pop open Ace Odds for us. So this is Ace Odds. It gives you the implied probability based on the odds that are given, but then you can look at the numbers to see how it correlates. So the odds that we're getting here for Dearica Hamby are about minus 119. And that implies there's a 54.3% probability of this prop hitting. Now, if we take a look at these numbers, what I'm trying to see is an edge. So firstly, if we look at the season data, the under's actually hit in 57% of games, which gives us a slight edge there if the probability is saying 53%. If you look at head-to-head, it's 100%, but that's a little bit distorted. You've got last season's data, but we're 1 from 1 on this season. And if we look at the last 10, it's a 50% hit rate. Last 5, only 40%. So the recent form, I'd probably say that the lines are just about right, but I think this gives us the best indication. 2024, 57% hit rate gives us a bit more sample size. And then when you look at home, it's a 64% hit rate to the under. So the hit rate is pretty decent to the under. Matchup, we know that the Storm don't give up too many points to forwards. I honestly don't mind taking the under here for Jerica Hamby. So I think that play I feel a lot better than the others from the first game. So Hamby, I don't mind that. So we can take a look. She's added to the list. All right. Next up, what do we see? So there's not much in terms of consistency if we're looking at head-to-head hit rates. Another that we can take a look at is this opponent rank filter. Lets us know where teams are good and bad based off the rank. But there's also not too many player props available in this game. So until the Storm confirm their team, there's no other props for the Storm. So it's a lot of sparks. So you might have to download Outlier and do your own little bit of research. If you are interested, 7-day free trial in the video description below. The next up, we're looking at the Connecticut Sun versus Liberty. So that's sure to be a good game. Looking at this, there's no props for the Liberty. It's all Connecticut Sun props available at the moment as I record this. But looking at the last 10 games, what can we see? So one that stands out would be Alyssa Thomas, under 11.5 points, which is a very low line for her. In the last 10 games, this has hit in 70% of them. 7 out of her last 10. She's averaging 9.1. Liberty allow the 5th fewest points, so close to middle of the pack in terms of the matchup. And if you look at head-to-head numbers, in 10 games against the Liberty, Alyssa Thomas has gone under in 7 of those games. This season, they played each other twice. Alyssa Thomas scored 10 points and 3 points in those 2 games. She had a whole lot of minutes. One game, she shot the ball 11 times. The following game, 4 times. And she didn't get to the free throw line very much at all. I'd probably lean to the under here, but 11.5 makes me a little bit nervous. Minus 119 odds, so very similar to the last play that we looked at. You're looking at an implied probability of 54%. She's hit the under in 57% of games. She's hit the under against his team in 70% of games. So I might be holding on to the Alyssa Thomas from last season. As you can see, this season, she's averaging 11.2 points. Last season, she was averaging 15.8. She would have covered the hell out of this line. This season, 4-point reduction in terms of her points per game. So she's had a bit of a drop-off there. So if we think about the head-to-head data, this season, she's averaging 4 points less than she was last season. Therefore, she's gone under in both games against the Liberty. But even in previous seasons, her hit rate wasn't great, despite her averaging a lot more in those seasons. So I think the under for Alyssa Thomas, her points, honestly, I don't mind that at all. 11.5 does scare me. For her, it's probably 5 buckets and a couple free throws, but not the consistency, right? So let's take a look at that one. What else is showing up over the last 10? There's under 9.5 rebounds for Alyssa Thomas as well. Shit, the ultimate Alyssa Thomas fade. She's hit the under in 7 out of her last 10 games. 8.2 is her average. The Liberty, the middle of the pack in terms of rebounds allowed to forwards. Overall, they are 4th, but they actually give up the most rebounds to guards, believe it or not. They don't give up rebounds to centers at all. But the forward spot, it is a middle of the pack type matchup. Now, Alyssa Thomas, she's hit the under 9.5 in 61% of games this season. And in head-to-head matchups, she's hit the under in 7 out of her last 10 against the Liberty. But she has rebounded quite well against them this season. 12 rebounds in game 1, then 9 rebounds in game 2. So pretty much 21 rebounds in 2 games. 10.5 was an average against the Liberty this season. Line's at 9.5. I don't know if I could take the under. I'd lean that way, but not with too much confidence. So I have to pass on that. If we look at form over the last 5 to see if we can get some consistency, got nothing with a really high hit rate. So I have to pass on that. Now, if we look at the head-to-head numbers to see if we can find something, we've got Dejanay Carrington under 12.5 points. I think I had a lean on her last game to the under as well. And she did score 12 points against the Mercury. But in head-to-heads, 7 games against this Liberty team, she's gone under in 5 out of the 7. 2 games this season, 12 points and 8 points for Dejanay. Looking at her last 10, 5 out of her last 10, she's gone under. The matchup for Liberty, they're actually not too good at defending guards. They're middle of the pack there, but they're quite good at limiting bigs. So we can see that the bigs, they limit quite well in points and rebounds. So maybe an under for Brianna Jones is something that we could look at. But for Dejanay Carrington, I don't think I can get there. I can't fade her right now. But here she is, Brianna Jones. We'll look at her points and her rebounds because we know the matchup, it makes sense. So 3 games against the Liberty. She's gone under in 2 out of the 3, 13 and 17 points this season, though. And looking at her last 10, 5 out of her last 10. She went over against the Mercury 16, and I know that because we bet on her to go over 12.5. I don't know if I could fade her at this spot. I know the matchup is difficult, but in saying that, she's had a bit of success against the Liberty this season. So that makes me a little bit cautious. There's no rebound prop available for Brianna Jones right now, so I'm going to have to pass on that. But looking to see what the other hit rates look like, and there's nothing screaming out to me in terms of consistency. I think the Alyssa Thomas, I think under her points, probably the most consistent play that I can come up with from this. But 7.5, she could get that early. That's my only concern. Jumping into the last game, it's the Chicago Sky versus the Las Vegas Aces. Looking at the hit rates over the last 10, and this girl will be killing it. Chennedy Carter, 18.5 points. I remember when her line was at 14.5 when she got injected to the starting lineup. But she's hit this in 8 of the last 10, averaging 20.5 points per game. She just had 2 games against the Liberty, 22 points, and then followed it up with 7. Hit rate has been pretty nice for her. The matchup against the Aces is a good one. The Aces do allow the 4th most points to guards in the league this season, but they have been a little bit better since Gray's return in head-to-head matchups. Only played the Aces once this season, but she did score 20 points in 34 minutes. She took 20 shots in that game. She made 9 of them. Looking at her last 10, she's taking 17.3 shots per game, and she's getting about 30 minutes a night. That last game against the Liberty, she only played 15.8 minutes, which is very low. She only had 3 fouls, so it wasn't foul trouble. So she only took 10 shots. So she was on pace to take 20 shots in that game if she got her 30 minutes, but she didn't finish it out. So I guess I'm not overly close to the injuries and all that type of stuff. So I'm having a quick look at RotoWire to see if we can get some insight into what happened. Out of 7 points, ended her 12-game streak of hitting double figures. She's been confident all season, but her inefficiency Saturday also meant a reduction in playing time. She was 3 for 10. That's her worst shooting performance, taking more than 5 shots in a game this year. She will likely bounce back. So that's what we want to see. So there's no injuries, which is good. She just wasn't shooting well, and then she got reduced minutes. So 30% from the field, not a great start. Keeping in mind, look at this game against the Storm. 7 for 22, 32% from the field. Still got her minutes, though. But yeah, back to her normal ways. 18.5 against the Aces team, who has been better defensively, but against guards, they have somewhat vulnerable. And look, she's done it against them before. So, Chennedy Carter, I'm looking at you to continue to be a consistent beast for us. All right, next up in terms of consistency, these first half props I don't want to fuck around with. We can look at the stat padding machine known as Angel Reese. Her rebound line at 12.5. She's covered this in 7 out of her last 10 games, averaging 14.3. The Aces give up the 3rd most rebounds overall, and they give up the most rebounds to forwards in the league. So the one thing about the Aces, they probably don't have the size that some other teams do have. They definitely have the talent, that's for sure, but they don't have the size. And someone like Angel Reese can probably take advantage of that size and have a little bit of work rate in there as well. So Angel Reese at 12.5, I don't mind. She's covered this in 4 out of her last 5 games versus bottom 5 defenses for rebounds allowed. So these are her last 5 games when she's come up against the teams who allow the most rebounds. She covered in all except for the game against the Seattle Storm. And in that game, she only had 30 minutes. So looking at her last 10 games, she's playing 33.3 minutes a night. Provided there's a blowout, she can probably get these opportunities. But Angel Reese at 12.5, I don't hate it. Not going to lie to you. She just had 16 rebounds against the Liberty. She'd be stat pattern. Now, she's not going to shoot any better, I don't imagine, so there's a lot of offensive rebounds to go around. Angel Reese, your rebounds interest me, so let me add you to my short list. All right, so those are your most consistent players over the last 10. Looking at the ones over the last 5, is there anything that stands out? We've got Asia Wilson, over 26.5 points. It's a whole lot of points, but she's covered this in 4 out of her last 5, averaging 29.6. In terms of the defense, the middle of the pack defensively in terms of points allowed. If we look at head-to-head matchups, she's played them once this season. She did score 31 points in that game, but just 6 overall. I just feel like this is a really high line. The matchup is not the best, so I'm not screaming to take it. The only reason you would take it is because over her last 5, she has been covering. But outside of that, not loving that play. Looking at head-to-head matchups, though, what comes up for us? So we've got the Kennedy Carter play we've looked at. Angel Reese over 12.5 points could be interesting. But you could also look at Angel Reese maybe points plus rebounds if the over checks out. So she had 18 points the last time she played the Aces, which ain't too bad. The Aces, they do give up the 4th most points to forwards in the league. Over her last 10 games, Angel Reese, she's only covered this in 5 over the last 10. She's actually gone under in 3 straight games, 11, 10, and 8. She's been getting minutes. She's been taking shots, but her shot percentage has been awful. She's shooting 43% in this 10-game stretch, but as of late, 2 games under 30% from the field. So there could be a bounce back here, but I'm not willing to put my money on it. So I'm probably going to have to pass on that. Outside of that, in terms of quality, strong hit rate against the opposition, Asia under 11.5 rebounds. Now, she has been rebounding like an animal as of late, but she's the under in 5 out of 6 games against the Sky. The only game this season against them, she only had 6 rebounds. But looking at her last 5 games, shit, she's averaging 15.4 rebounds a game. Been on an absolute tear. So I wouldn't be willing to fade that right now. That recent form is too strong, but I also wouldn't take the over because historically against this team, she hasn't rebounded all too well. But yeah, outside of that, if we're looking at hit rates on the season, Asia Wilson, 70% hit rate to the over in her points line. I guess it's not, we've got a good sample size in terms of season data. Last thing I want to do is just check the season data for all the props that are available and see if maybe we missed something. There's a lot of players that have a higher hit rate, but a lot of them are first half plays. Under in her assist prop potentially 65% hit rate on the season, but she did spend a bit of time coming off the bench, so her minutes were reduced, which is why that number's blown out. Similar to Dawson. So yeah, the season data is not going to give us anything that we need. All right, so we have a couple of leans from this slate. Very quick video. Hopefully you liked it. Easy to digest. And if you did like it, hope you smash the like button. Hopefully you subscribed as well. We've probably hit the milestone of 8,500 by the time that you're watching this. And if we have, I thank you. Now, the 4 leans that we have. Jerica Hamby under 19.5 points. The matchup sucks for her, and the hit rate for the season is pretty decent. Alyssa Thomas, under 11.5 points. She's having a very down year in comparison to the last. A 4-point drop in her averages. And as of late, the hit rate's been great. Kennedy Carter, 18.5 points. We're looking at the over. She's been very consistent as of late, bouncing back off a poor game against the Liberty, where she failed to get over 10 points. She should get at least 30 minutes in this game, about 17 to 20 shot attempts. And if she does, I like the over in 18.5 points. And then lastly, Angel Reese, over 12.5 rebounds. So we got pretty much 1 pick in each game. Over 12.5 rebounds for Angel Reese. She's a stat padding machine, and I don't think that stops anytime soon. So she's gunning for that Rookie of the Year. That's the way that I'm leaving. Sorry, not leaving. That's the way that I'm leaning. I'm actually leaving right now, though. So I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.